Most banks are asking the wrong question. So they look at transaction and ask, is it suspicious? The problem is that when the transaction happens, the attacker has already been inside the system for days, sometimes weeks, mapping your behavior, testing access, etc. So Cleafy is pushing in a different model toward a completely different direction. So the idea here is to detect the attacker's infrastructure before fraud actually happens. So this is a very, very interesting angle that we don't see much. So they're currently building a platform that reconstruct the entire attack chain in real time. So they just raised 12 million. What is also interesting is that apparently there is zero customer churn in the past 10 years, which I think is important to mention, and it's not you hear very often. And they're protecting currently around 250 million users across 150 banks, including, for example, ENG. So super strong value proposition, super strong cybersecurity angle. Impressive, I would say. I don't know, Nick, what is your take? But I was very, very much surprised.
No, I agree with you. I like your opening. I mean, it was like a marketing statement for them, and I agree actually with you. So right now with the speed of AI and the capability of autonomous systems to to find the way to get into the transaction, to find the victim, to operate in a fraudulent way. So we need systems that are able to not to react, but to anticipate this type of weakness in this old infrastructure. So very interesting technology, very interesting play, and interesting
It's a
round.
full, yeah, interesting. I mean, think about the industry. That's a total new take of a pre-fraud detection sort of industry that maybe it's going to be the next thing. So the core, just to get a little bit on more on the technical side, which I think is super cool, is essentially they're really trying to work with big data and understand as much pattern as possible in order to run a predictive system. So this is this whole discipline, I would say, which is the attack chain reconstruction. So it really changes the approach. And what is interesting is also that we are right now very well positioned to actually run this kind of signals detection that maybe years ago we couldn't have processed. So that's very much in line with everything that is happening, AI, data processing, etc. So that's an interesting take. Yeah, I mean, the retention is insane. If these guys have been essentially killing it at sales, yeah, it's 100% retention. So imagine that you don't like a zero churn at all. That's something, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. But if the promise is true, I mean, so churning, I mean, it means that there is something 10 times better on the market, and
Yep.
maybe it will come, but
Yep.
that's super cool.
And honestly, 12 million seems not enough. I mean, for the
Well,
promise,
this is this is the
yeah.
second round, so they raised 10 million
I think
already. So the startup has been they've been around for a while. So
yes.
there's probably an angle of resilience here. So the startup is not new. They didn't start yesterday. But maybe this is the time when a solution such as this one becomes really relevant. I mean, just a few years ago, in the pre-ChatGPT era, maybe you had volumes of transactions, but the tools in the hands of attackers and the tools in the hands of defenders were similar, and big data analysis, and more or less there you are, and you kind of are able to allow to digest a slight amount of fraud. But now that the system is so quick, the tools are now so powerful in handling huge volumes of data from your couch, basically, as an attacker.
Absolutely.
Probably this is the right time for this type of tools or something in the new generation of prevention, right?
No, for sure. But even also, if you think about it operationally, that's maybe which is maybe less visible. Beside the sort of the innovative approach of the pre-fraud sort of approach, is the fact that operationally that can massively avoid false positives. So when the fraud team is engaged, there is a percentage which is basically false positives in terms of fraud. So they are flagged as fraud, but they are not. So that actually can cut the time even operationally. So there is kind of a double advantage there. So that's why I'm getting excited about this deal, because it's like it seems super interesting and very revolutionary, I would say. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting take. Interesting take. Yeah, I mean, with this system, you should expect to have like two levers or two tuning handles.
Yeah.
One is how much false negatives you want, how many false positives you want, and you tune, and you know that those two things are related, right? So I mean, if you want to have fewer false negatives, then you will have more false positives, and so on and so forth. So if you are able to
Good point.
improve this relationship, that's business, right?
Yeah. Interesting. But great approach, definitely a great angle, and definitely kudos to the team for the very good fundraise. So awesome. Right, moving on. Let's talk about Gyala, cybersecurity startup raising 4 million in a growth round from Deep Ocean SGR, Terna Forward, CDP Venture Capital, and Ventive. So again, today we're talking about security, cybersecurity. That's the day, right? And some military elements as well. So a few interesting elements here. So Gyala is basically leveraging essentially like military grade cybersecurity tools that have been made available to non-military application, and they are playing in the OT, operation technology, IT, and IoT resilience layer. So it's multi-layer, it's military grade, and again, full Italian, of course. And that's pretty interesting in terms of infrastructure, I would say.
Yeah, the promise here is to secure a complex infrastructure with advanced. This military grade algorithms is the most curious angle, right? So having this type of technology looks, almost scary in some sense.
And especially when people talk about dual use, sort of civilian technology used in military, that's the other way around. So that's interesting to see this kind of way. Usually we see in a lot of deals the one way side. So it's not always that you find military application applied for civilian use. So that was interesting also to
even though in
right?
Yeah, that's true. Even though a lot of technology that we use actually was born in the military space, and probably this is even more true in the cybersecurity space. So a lot of it comes in some way from military research. Also because the main countries with cybersec products are countries with a very technological military digital teams: Israel, US, China. So. Russia. Those are the main countries producing cybersecurity products. Now I wonder which military is the one where that's sourcing the military algorithm for Gyala. Is the Italian military?
I don't know. I was actually, given the next news, I was actually researching how Italy is placed in terms of ranking of best military in Europe. So I'm not going to touch the word. And it was pretty interesting because there are people arguing that Italy has one of the top 3 most advanced, naval, aerospace, military in Europe. And the only difference between, for example, Italy and UK, Italy or France is just the budget. But the kind of technology apparently is like one of the most advanced in Europe. So pretty interesting. I was not expecting that. But apparently that's where we're focusing a lot. So
we excel in that. And that's interesting, right?
We excel in that, yes. So yeah, that's a good segue for the last round, which is Mirai Robotics, a startup developing autonomous vehicles for maritime sectors, raising 3.5 million in a pre-seed round from Primo Capital, Tech Shop, and 40 Gems Ventures. So the idea here is to give the maritime sort of space, boat and what not connected to that, the connectivity and then the autonomous layer. So, software that run vessels, dock-to-dock autonomy, mission intelligence, etc. So this also has military flavors. I know they've been working in the military as well. And again, that's the future of what is going to happen in the maritime sector, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a deal that we led actually, with a very strong team in this case, as you mentioned, and a very compelling vision. Meaning, we are talking about autonomous drones, flying drones, autonomous cars in the streets. We have a lot of startups across the world that are operating on the sea or with different angles, and the team at Mirai had a very specific one at the beginning. So full force on the proprietary full stack of autonomous maritime vehicle. Super interesting.
Yeah, and let me take a guess here. I think if we compare like driving, flying, and maritime, I feel that maritime has the least barrier when it comes to like a speed of development, because it's kind of an industry that always leveraged like the latest technology to orient, like GPS, radar, and whatnot, and you don't have all the limitation that, for example, like drone have when it comes to aerospace and regulation and whatnot, or driving when it comes to actually safety and people around. So probably there is very fertile ground for forward-looking like technology and deployment, I would say. So I would say a big speed of deployment here.
There is, of course, you're right. Even though that's only partially true, it's not that easier, in some other sense. It is that, in the maritime world, the regulation about autonomous vehicles is more advanced than in other areas, in other sectors. So they allow for more autonomy right now in the current regulation than on the streets. So because they were there before. But it doesn't mean that it's easier. I mean, think about when you are driving a boat into a port, into a harbor.
Of course.
That's super difficult. I mean, you can slide, the boat can just move a little bit, and you cause an immediate accident. So it's not, strictly speaking, easier. Is that the initial technology and the regulation started way before than the other markets. So we are ahead in terms of maturity with regulating autonomy. But
And
still,
maybe
the
also
technology
because,
stack, there's a lot of room
yeah.
to grow there in the tech stack.
But also because, as you say, I completely agree, safety is a big issue. I mean, you can get highly wrong when you dock your boat, and I've seen bad situation happening from the best sailors, and it happens. And yeah, I mean, it's a high risk also maybe operation. So that's why also technology had like a big push in the maritime like sector. So
Exactly.
super interesting. Yeah. Fantastic. All right, Nick, let's maybe mention some new funds that we don't see every day. So back to you.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to Lumen 2, the second instance of the Lumen Ventures venture capital funds, with a hard cap 100 million, I think. So a very interesting size that we need, insurtech, fintech, and the software space in general. CDP as a backer, but also from banks, financial institutions. So we have a broad base of institutional investors investing there. So good signal in this case. Very happy and excited to work with them. So good news for the startup ecosystem in Italy. We have more funding available. This is the way to
Fantastic.
go. Mm-hmm.
No, that's great. That's great. And in some of the most critical areas, so fintech and insurtech, definitely some of the biggest area, I would say, that always, we've seen moving very fast, through the year. So that's definitely a good sign. Yeah. All right, Nick, thank you so much for joining today, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jack. Take care and see you in a week. Ciao, everybody.